Was thinking about my cousin. Just call her Kay because I want to speak about her in detail, perhaps. And anyone in our family who saw this would know who I was talking about and know these facts anyway. And I hope that's okay, Kay. Um, I'm doing it for I'm doing it for my own betterment. Some alternate me 30 dimensions away might have said I'm doing it for everyone's betterment, but that's not true. I'm doing it for my own betterment, just to reflect, and everything I say about you and with you is with respect, as I think you know. But I put an Easter egg in my blog recently, yesterday or today, with a link to my 2016 journal. So anyone who happens across a tiny little link somewhere can read. My blog is pretty open, but it's definitely meant. It's edited for an audience, whereas for a wider audience, whereas my journal is edited for me. And I'm going to continue writing it as such, but I think I'm going to keep putting little Easter eggs to my yearly journals in my blog, just in case anyone wants to read them. And there's a warning at the beginning that basically says this is like the slam book from high school. If you don't have thick skin or whatever, like turn back now. Develop a healthy disregard for my thoughts if you don't already have one, before you continue. And I was kind of flipping through that journal, and I was reading some about Kay and what I had written in there, and I don't know, maybe some of it was kind of critical, but Kay sent me some videos the other day, and not just because of those videos, but throughout the time that I've known her as an adult. I mean, I didn't really know what to think of her as a kid. She was just the crazy older cousin with I think some INXS posters on her wall or something. I don't know what band, but like some band I never heard of. And great mixtapes. My cousins were all about the mixtapes. And she and her younger brother especially. So anyway, I really respect her, and I realized that one of the reasons that she and I even talk at this point in our lives is because she's had some bumps in the road, and I've had some bumps in the road. And it reminds me of this, one of my favorite sayings ever, and it exists in every language. It's not attributable to anyone. It's a piece of universal wisdom, at least on this planet, perhaps elsewhere. And there are many versions of it you can look up online, and they all have kind of a great, unique connotation. But the old English version is, "A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor," and that is some fucking brilliant shit right there. Those few little words, which exist in their own form in all the cultures and all the languages of the world, especially the ones that are near oceans, but even ones that are not, surprisingly, they have lakes and stuff. That piece of wisdom permeates our world, I think, because it is so piercing and in so few words expresses so much knowledge. And as someone who has not been on smooth seas, I feel vindicated by it. Okay, I'll use that word, vindicated. Because I do feel a disconnect with people who have been on smooth seas, because usually in our world it's because their parents are rich or they're just lucky. You don't really earn smooth seas in our culture any more than you earn them in nature. It's just luck. You know what I mean? I mean, when you go out on the boat, you don't control the sea. You just get the sea that you get, So I certainly don't blame people who have had smooth seas. I'm genuinely happy for them in one way, and I'm genuinely unhappy for them in another way. I don't pity my cousins, for example, who have had smooth sailing lives, but they are definitely at a disadvantage spiritually. Yes, I mean that. I said that, and I mean that. I think even I'm going to quote a Jesus scripture here. So don't check out just because you hate religion. I hate religion too. True statement. And well, I don't know if I hate it, but I just consider it irrelevant most of the time. But and I just had enough of it because I was a pastor's kid, and I just, like, my religion meter is full. Like, my quota of organized religion is like got filled up around the 10th grade or somewhere in there. But what was I saying? Religion. Oh yeah, Jesus scripture. But the Jesus scripture that's usually translated something like, it is easier, I think so, but I think, even if you're not into Christianity, which, hey, I'm not either, I think even hardcore atheists should recognize the wisdom of Jesus. That was a smart motherfucker right there, you know what I mean? And, like, whether he's the son of God or not, who gives a shit? Like, I'm not concerned with that myself, and I don't think you should either. Certainly don't let it get in your way of learning something from one of the smartest people, one of the wisest people to walk the planet, But anyway, his scripture saying something like, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now let's take the derivative of that scripture and not take it so literally. Instead of the kingdom of heaven, let's get rid of all ideas of heaven. Fuck heaven, forget heaven. Let's say that the kingdom of heaven just means a joyful life. And instead of a rich man, let's think of that as meaning someone who has had smooth sailing, someone who has been groomed for this world, someone who was groomed by their family to become the inheritor of wealth or the inheritor of political power. That's someone who's had smooth sailing. And let's replace that with the quote-unquote rich man from the scripture. And then, so let's restate the scripture to say something like, I'll go the other way, it is harder for a camel to pass through the eye, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for someone who has been sailing smooth seas to find joy in this life. People who have been sailing smooth seas are probably going to say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what my life is like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you're right. I don't. I can't compare my life to yours. I don't know what your joy is like compared to my joy. I'll never be able to do that. But I do know that that when you play poker, the best hand is not always the best hand for that table or for that round. And when you get 3 kings and 2 8s, you should not exhale a sigh of relief. You should be scared shitless. And when you get 2 2s, a 7, a 3, and a 1, that's when you should be happy, typically in this life. Because the more you have to lose, the more you have, and let me state that a little bit differently, because I think fear and loss are clearly very related concepts, very tightly coupled feelings. I think all fear is fear. Well, I think to me, this is a side issue, but all fear is fear of becoming, of what I might become. Everything that I fear in my mind is a fear of what I might become. Every fear. And that's a fear of loss of current self. I'm afraid of losing who I am now. That's not a good position to be in. And the more you have, When you had those smooth sailing seas and you have that monetary or political power, then you have more to lose and more to fear to lose. And the more you have to fear, the fewer options you have because you're controlled by your fear of loss. Whereas when you have nothing, you have every option because there's nothing to lose. Some people say, like in Titanic, I think they say, when you got nothing to lose. A person who has, I think I've said this in the past, a person who has nothing can do anything. If I stole that from someone, then I'm sorry. But yeah. I just think that, I'm not claiming to be an expert on the spiritual path or anything like that. I'm not even, I don't even know if I'm a spiritual person or not. I'm not really worried about it. You know what I mean? That's kind of not what I think about I try to think about the here and now. What can I do here and now? And when I think about my cousin Christy, just to wrap this up, I feel blessed that she's had some of the same troubles I've had, because that's why we're talking. And the fact is, if she had had a smooth sailing life, we wouldn't have a relationship right now. And this is going to sound haughty, but I believe it's true, and I mean it with every fiber of my little brain. If she had had a smooth sailing life, I don't think I would feel that I had anything to learn from her. Because if you go back to that saying, a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. Well, if my cousin Kay, did I just say her name? Sorry. If my cousin Kay had had a smooth life, smooth sailing, then she would not be a skillful sailor. And I consider her to be a skillful sailor. And I hope Kay, I hope you watch this. And don't read my journal. But you are, you're my elder by a few years anyway, and you're my elder in experience, and you teach me, and I learn from you, and I admire your wisdom and your composure and your peace. And I don't think you would have any of those things if you had had a smooth sailing life. Of depth, certainly, and I don't think, and I'm pretty fucking sure I'm right about this, but I don't think you would be somebody that I had anything to learn from, or much to learn from, if you were a sailor who had always encountered smooth seas.